From the outside, this home in suburban Bethesda, Maryland looks like a dream, worth more than $2 million. 3 stories, 6 bedrooms, a big yard. But not everything is what it seems. Look closer, and you'll see signs of trouble.
So some of you out there in the audience who remember my other 2 videos on this particular topic might be thinking that I'm rehashing an old story, that maybe I'm just doing this video yet again in order to cash in, but in reality, I never expected for this to be anything but a one-off video, and that's because the first story that I covered related to Tamieka Goode stealing this $2 million house in Maryland was the story of her being arrested, tried, and convicted for doing so. So I thought the story was done way back when I initially covered it. I was ready to move on. It was pretty funny because this woman was like a financial advisor on TikTok. She was trying to be an influencer, and part of her financial advice credibility was that she had this fancy home. So for her to be convicted of stealing said home and the evidence from her TikTok to be used against her at trial, I thought, yeah, this was obvious, done deal, signed, sealed, and delivered. She even got 90 days in jail. But as we found out in my first follow-up, upon being released from jail after just 14 days, because she filed an appeal and paid a bond for her appeal, she ended up moving right back into the property, breaking in yet again, stealing the property once more. And this was despite the fact that, again, she had a judge's order, which we'll find out from her attorney, that barred her from doing this exact same thing. So I thought, okay, the first video, obviously, that should have been the end of it, but now we have the second video related to this appeal, but I'm never gonna have to talk about this again. Obviously, this story is over. The woman is clearly stealing this property. Everybody knows it. She was convicted of it. Her lawyer performed like an absolute dumbass on Fox 45, but then I turn on my YouTube.com and find out that it's now a national story. This woman is still in this property. Weeks later, after her conviction, after she had a judge's order to not move back to the property, she is still there, and the same neighbor is now going to the national media to try to get her out of this location. And this is absolute madness. The deja vu levels in this tale are ridiculous, and this is exactly what we're going to talk about today. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
House next door, we've always kind of lived in its shadow. It snakes around the back of our property.
19-year-old Ian Chen grew up right next door.
We're a neighborhood that likes to help each other out. We watch each other's houses when we're away. All of the doors and windows have been boarded up.
Ian says that's why he noticed last summer, when he was home on break from college, that something was off at the house next door.
So the real hero of this story is this young man right here. This 18-year-old guy who came back from classes at university to discover that a squatter had set up shop in his neighborhood, who decided to do everything and anything to get this woman out, as she and her companions are a clear and obvious danger to the entire community. And by the way, if you guys are unaware, this woman, Tamieka Goode, is shacking up with a guy who's convicted of multiple violent crimes, and by the way, multiple luxury car thefts, which obviously is something that you have to be worried about if you live in a neighborhood where there is a $2 million property. But it turns out the whole entire case is based on this guy's actions, because while in most areas the prosecutor has to file charges against somebody, Maryland, through a weird quirk in their law, actually allows regular ordinary citizens to do so. So the initiator of the original case was in fact this young man right here, who took the initiative to get this woman the hell up out of the neighborhood.
I began by knocking on the door, posting some no trespassing signs, really just trying to identify whoever was living there.
In most states, it's prosecutors who bring criminal charges against other people. But Maryland's a little unique because citizens can actually file claims in court. Ian Chen did just that.
I filed statement of charges for trespassing and burglary.
Now, if you guys can recall, Tamieka Goode's defense for her stealing this property was absurd, ridiculous in every possible way, and the judge really let her have it in the court of law. But one of the things that she brought up as an example for why she is entitled to this $2-point-something million house in this particular neighborhood was the fact that there were no trespassing signs, and it wasn't exactly clear to her who owned the property.
During the trial, Goode argued that it was unclear which bank owned the foreclosed house. because there's no clear trespassing sign. The assistant state's attorney for Montgomery County replied after hearing Goode repeat herself multiple times, saying, "I know who doesn't own the property, and that's Tamieka Goode," adding, "This isn't some vacant, abandoned, way out of the woods house."
Imagine being an attorney, somebody who went to university for 4 years, graduated, took the LSAT, ended up going to law school for 3 years, unless you did part-time, which is 4 years. Then you actually have to sit for the bar, pass the bar, get a job at the prosecutor's office, or make it to the point where you end up becoming a judge, only to have this dumbass woman actually argue to your face in a court of law that she is entitled to a $2+ million home for 2 reasons. And those reasons are, there was no trespassing sign on the property. By the way, this is apparently false because she ended up taking the property back after this particular trial, after this conviction, and no trespassing signs were put up after the fact. But in addition to that, because you don't know exactly who owns this property, therefore she has the ability to take it. And of course, you as an attorney have to state the obvious, which is, we know you don't own the property, which is why you don't get it. Like, this is a thing that adults had to communicate to another adult who apparently thinks black girl magic entitles her to this property. And by the way, the reason race is actually a factor in this particular trial is because part of this woman's defense, if you read the written accounts of this particular trial, was that the neighbors didn't like her in the neighborhood because she was a black woman, and that is why they decided to initiate all these proceedings against her. Because according to her, this little Asian boy right here, this guy, who initiated the proceedings, he's racist because he assumed that she didn't belong there. Now, of course, this theory of the case is a bit undercut in my humble opinion because she actually didn't belong in the neighborhood. Like, his assumption, even if it was racially based, which by the way, it wasn't. You actually hear from his interview that they moved in the middle of the night with a U-Haul truck. He thought these were the actual authorized tenants. Somebody in the neighborhood had told him that no, they absolutely were not. In fact, they were planning on selling it to another person, but then Tamieka Goode moved in, stole the property, and blew up that sale. And that is when he knew for a fact that they were not actually there. But again, even if he made that assumption, the fact that he was correct in that assumption kind of undercuts the point that, oh my god, evil white racism was afoot here, when you're actually stealing the place, when you're actually stealing the home, when you actually don't belong in that particular neighborhood. But again, like I told you guys, she ended up getting convicted of this, somehow getting out on the appeal. She paid the bond, and then she moved back into the property. And one of the funniest things about this whole sequence of events is she actually retained legal counsel for her appeal, but the legal counsel realized that he had an absolute idiot of a client during an interview when he couldn't answer a basic question about this.
We spoke with Alex Webster about his client.
Look, there's a question. It's really the number one question on everybody's mind. How would your client, Ms. Tamieka Goode, get inside a $2.3 million property?
Cut. I don't know if I can answer that. Allegedly. Can I cut?
We're
rolling.
We're rolling, my friend. Yeah.
All right, can you re-ask the question?
Sure.
Now that clip right there is in the Hall of Fame of attorney clips because this lawyer right now in that moment realized that his client is an absolute idiot, that he has to represent her and provide her the best representation possible, despite the fact that she is clearly and obviously guilty, incredibly stupid. And again, he wanted a retake. He could not handle it under the first try because obviously he knows how ridiculous this case is. But to make matters even crazier, this guy reappeared for another interview with ABC7, and he had another moment like this. So everything in this case is just repeating over and over again. So obviously we have Tamieka Goode breaking into the property, occupying it, despite the fact that she knows it's illegal to do so, while making all sorts of fringe and ridiculous claims to this particular property, even though again, she has been convicted, and as a term of her appeal, she is not supposed to be living there during the course of the appeal. But in addition addition to that, you have the Asian guy who decided that he is going to file yet another set of charges against her because citizens are able to do so in the state of Maryland. And this is going to be a completely separate case on the same subject matter for this woman, Tamieka Goode, to be in the court again while she's currently going through the appeal on her previous conviction related to this particular case. In addition to that, we also have statements from the lawyers, and this time, instead of one dumbass lawyer, we have two lawyers in the hopes that this will prevent this guy from messing up again. But as I'm about to show you, even that repeats.
Was she told that she couldn't return to the home?
Well, to be candid, she was given an order to return back to the home to remove her property from the home. So,
but she was ordered to vacate the property.
Yes, but that's, again, civil matter versus the criminal matter.
Now, look, this attorney might be a wonderful guy. Honestly, if you were dealt the cards that he was dealt, you would obviously have nowhere to go from this. But if I were him, I would probably stop doing television interviews because in each and every one, he really exposes the ridiculousness of his client. And the thing is, he just admitted right now that his client is committing yet another crime, which he labeled a civil matter, even though, again, there's pending criminal charges related to that, which, by the way, are the exact same charges that he is working to fight against on appeal at this moment in time, just in a separate case at the same property with the same person and the same filing, because everything's deja vuing. But he just admitted that the judge ordered her only to clear out her property, not to go back to living in said property, and yet she's doing so anyway. I think this woman, after this appeal, is going to file an appeal claiming incompetent representation because this guy once again fumbled the bag in this TV interview. And by the way, the other parts of the interview did not look all that much better because he tried to make the case that Tamieka Goode, good person, wonderful in every possible way, but he wasn't able to answer a basic question, which is, what does she do for a living? And considering she's trying to take a $2-point-something million house, this would be absolutely crucial. And guess what? The attorney has no idea.
Describe the nature of her residence there.
Making use of an abandoned property, which isn't a crime necessarily.
Alex Webster and Tom Moronic represent Tamieka Goode.
Tell me about Tamieka Goode. Who is she? Describe her.
Well, Miss Goode is a Baltimore native. She's a really nice person.
What does she do for work?
Well, she is a mother. I don't know exactly what she does for work because we haven't gotten to that deep detail of, that.
What am I even watching right now? You would think that these were the prosecutors in this particular case, but again, this is his two-person defense team. They don't even know what she does for a living. They can't even say she's a good person with a straight face. They can't answer basic questions. And by the way, shortly after this, again, as the clip I showed you before, he admitted the guilt of his client in reoccupying the property for a future case. So this is where we're at with Tamieka Goode, one of the most entitled people I've ever seen in any of these squatter cases, allowed to get away with it time and time again, claim evil white racism is at fault, and again, use a defense in court that is so comedically laughable that the judge quite literally called her demented because in reality, that's exactly what she is. But I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Are we going to see this rehash yet again? Is this an infinite loop? Are we stuck in a time paradox?
Judge John C. Moffitt gave remarks before he made the ruling, telling Goode she had some demented thoughts to justify squatting. The prosecution replied, "This is frankly nuts."
Where eventually Tamieka Goode has to win in order for us to break free, or maybe, just maybe, is she finally going to get the justice that she deserves, which is jail time and significantly more jail time, as the next conviction will be of her as a repeat offender. Again, all your thoughts down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the absolute craziness of the Tamieka Goode case. Till next time.